back as a 276 here, playing some ArmA 3 Apex Preview. We'll start off in the new menu here. To enable the preview mode for Apex, check out my other video. I'll link it in the description and in this video here, probably, yeah, around this point right here. Anyway, in the other video that I've just linked, I took the VTOL aircraft for a fly and it was flying them around a bit and crashed the Xi'an. So I've had a little play around, a little bit of practice to get those going. So I'll load up an editor mission here and take you how to control the VTOLs, because they're not just straight VTOLs or straight aircraft. There's a few tips and tricks to them. Here we are with the we'll start off with the Blackfish here. I've basically removed everyone except for myself as the pilot, because we don't need anyone else for this. This is just a trial run using the armed variant of the Blackfish here. Let's get started. I'm going to run this in third person mode, so you can see the tilt of the engine nacelles there, so you can see what's happening. It makes it easy to visualize. From the cockpit you can see them to a point, but it takes focus off the front, and it's just easier if we do it in third person, so you can really get a feel for what it's doing. Let's wind her up. For this one I'm using a Thrustmaster T-Flight HOTAS X. It's not the best HOTAS out there, but it's what I've got to run with. This has a indent in the middle of the throttle axis, which makes it interesting, but gives me a good indication of what's halfway. Alright, so for these VTOL aircraft, like saying, they're not a pure straight up and down like a helicopter. You can take them off in a straight line down a runway just like a normal aircraft. Why you would do this is if you've got a payload in there which is too much to handle for being in hover, you can take off like a normal aircraft. With a Blackfish, the nacelles do point up, because if they pointed forward from in this configuration, they'd hit the ground. In ArmA, I don't know how it'll model the weight, if it will. Well, it should do. It did on the helicopters, the helicopter DLC, so I'm assuming this will do the same thing. If you've got an IFV in the back, it'll be a bit heavier. Okay, taking off in normal aircraft mode, simply if you go to half throttle, you can do some taxi movements. Just line up with the runway here, and coming to a stop. Bring back to zero throttle. To take off, pretty much just go full throttle. You can go a little bit less to go forward more first, but pretty much just full forward, full throttle. No, when it starts, the nacelle starts to transition, she will dip a bit, so just keep that in mind. Hopefully you got enough height. They will rotate on height, not so much speed, so if you don't have enough forward speed yet, you will hit the ground. Alright, so I'll flip around here and come onto the sun runway. To land in this configuration, if I don't crash into the terrain, land in this configuration, just drop your speed. The transition speed, or the landing speed for the Blackfish, I found is about 140-150 kilometers per hour. You got to keep in mind these things are heavy, so don't try and bring it on too sharp an angle of landing. Try and keep it close to the ground, just hovering above it until you hit your landing speed. You'll notice the nacelles automatically lifted up as you got closer. That also does affect your flight characteristics for landing, so you'll lose a bit of attitude control for that. Okay, in this mode, the Blackfish also has flaps, as you can see coming out there. If you want to transition to hover mode, you have to enable auto hover on. I don't know if the full release will have a separate switch between auto hover and switching modes between hover mode and aircraft mode. So I've got a button on my HOTAS here which will flick that for me, as you can see. Change it to off, so I'm now in auto hover mode. Now the flaps, when you move the flaps back and forth, it'll adjust the angle of the nacelles. So from here, full flaps down, it'll go full vertical. So as I'll demonstrate here, you can start hovering. That's half throttle for me. It gets you light on the wheels, but not much else. 3/4 is probably about a good balance point. A little bit more and you'll start lifting off. As you can see, pull it back a little bit, up a little bit, back a little bit to get a good hover. I've found it very hard to actually get a good level flight hover. You notice if you start banking or tipping forward and back, you will lose a little bit of altitude, so you may need a little bit more throttle to arrest that descent. So you can take off get forward speed like a traditional helicopter by just tipping forward, giving a little bit more throttle, tipping forward, or you can use the flaps and adjust the angle of the nacelles forward a little bit, and a little bit more, or a little bit more, and as you gain more and more speed you can tip them all the way forward and you're back into normal flight. From here you can switch between auto hover on or off to switch between the different flight modes for landing, but for this one we'll just keep it in hover mode, and I'll show you how to land from a hover. If I don't crash into the water. These things are heavy, just feel heavy. Okay, so transitioning back into hover, you can slow down in normal flight. As you get close to your stall point or your transition speed, which is about 150 kilometers per hour for this thing, you can full nacelles up. Once you start slowing down, the nose will dip and you'll have no control. Half throttle is probably a good one. Again, you're still flying down and it's full throttle for a second just to arrest my downward movement. And look at that, that's almost beautiful landing. Again, like I said, these things are heavy. You will be working in the upper half range of your throttle range. So again, that's half throttle. Just get you light on the wheels, doesn't lift you up. So if you're coming in too fast and you go full throttle, it may not be enough to arrest you downward. It will slow you down, but it may not be enough. So just keep that in mind. I'll take off normal helicopter style here. Moving forward, tipping forward until you reach sufficient speed. You can stay in this mode if you really want to. You don't really have to transition, but you will get more speed if you transition. Another thing to note is, again, it flies just like a helicopter, full throttle. It's full throttle, guys. That's barely enough to help me, so just keep that in mind when flying these things. They are heavy, they are very heavy. But they do have wheels, so you can land at quite some speed with them. Alright, another thing to keep in mind is if you are going to switch modes while on the ground, make sure the nacelles are as far forward as it will allow you before turning off your auto hover. So if you got auto hover is currently on, and I push it up to full vertical, turn off auto hover, so auto hover is now off, and start just going up. The aircraft will lift up, and above at a certain height above the ground she will transition forward, as you see, and if you don't have enough forward speed you will crash into the ground. So just make sure you get enough forward speed before you get too high off the ground, so it will transition correctly. Alright, so look at the CSAT Xi'an. Alright, here in the cockpit of the Xi'an. As you can see from the pilot's cockpit, you cannot see your control surfaces whatsoever, so you'll need to know what you're doing and where you're pointing. As we start the engines here, they use ducted fans in the wings and jet nozzles at the rear. Again, traditional aircraft takeoff, same thing. It's your default mode. Just forward movement. You can adjust your throttle more slower, and then it'll transition once you're a certain height above the ground. So this the Xi'an is quite a bit heavier than the Blackfish, or it feels heavier anyway, or maybe because the wings are smaller, she just feels like she's got less control. So you just got to keep that in mind. She will go faster than the Blackfish. She'll go over 400 kilometers per hour, so it's nice. The transition speed for this one is around the 160 kilometer mark, so about 10 to 20 kilometers faster than the Blackfish. So I think that's again due to the size of the wings there, even though the ducted fan should help a bit. Again, don't land too heavy in this thing. She doesn't like landing heavy. There you go, I hurt myself. Like I said, you lose a fair bit of control. There we go. Smoke billowing out there. Alright, same as before. If you want to transition into hover mode, turn your auto hover on and go full flaps down. It'll let you go into hover. Again, you need to apply 3/4 or more throttle to get into hover, and nothing else much changes here. And fly around like normal helicopters, or you can drop your flaps incrementally and it'll change these nozzles at the rear bit by bit, and you can go full flat out. And this thing will have the same characteristics as the Blackfish in regards to transition. If you not going fast enough when you transition, it will fall out of the sky. Again, slow down, put your flaps down, remember to give it plenty of throttle. Yeah, she will act like a helicopter, so that's half throttle, slow them down, and that's the speed should come down at about half throttle there. Just give it a bit more throttle to pull it back. And I don't normally fly in third person, so it's, the angles level and the like is a bit different. Forgive me. There we go, and we're on the ground. We'll do that in. Can you just do that in first person? Half throttle, about 3/4. Half, just to arrest my upward. Yeah, they are quite easy to hover. You just got to be just gentle with your movements. Adjust your throttle slowly and bit by bit. Don't do rapid movements as you normally would with a helicopter. And we'll touch down there. Alright, so transition into forward flight. And we'll do a traditional landing. So again, just be careful as you transition from horizontal to forward flight there, as it does it automatically. It will do it at a certain height above the ground, not at a certain speed. So if you haven't reached that speed yet, it will crash into the ground unless you can you got sufficient height. Not even that. If you can come off the edge of a mountain or something maybe. You can possibly nose dive it, dive it over the edge to bring it down, but yeah. I'll likely crash here, so don't mind me. Keep a little bit of throttle. Going very, very fast, but yeah, you do lose a little bit of control. Just start slowing down these things. And if you're coming down too hard and you crash. So yeah, you really need a shallow landing angle with a bit of speed, and just bleed off that speed as you hit the threshold. Alright, I hope you enjoyed watching that video of me crashing and burning, and hope you learned something from how to operate the VTOL aircraft in the Apex expansion for ArmA 3. Thanks very much for watching, and stay tuned.